Hey everyone, it's Dr. Nightstare. Glad you're here. Before we get into it, hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Quick question before we start. Where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? Alright, let's get settled. Get comfortable, let your body relax, and just take it easy. I found myself wandering through a cluttered junk shop one afternoon when my gaze settled on a porcelain doll. Its face was cracked and one eye was missing, yet I felt an inexplicable pull towards it. Sarah stood beside me, and when she saw the doll, a shiver ran through her, a reaction I understood but chose to disregard. I paid for it and carried the doll back to our house, placing her on the small table in my study. There, in the quiet room, its damaged form began to provide a peculiar comfort, settling into my days. The doll began to occupy my thoughts completely, and I sat for long hours in my study, watching her chipped face and the empty space where an eye had been. Time passed without my notice as I felt myself drawn into her unmoving gaze, and my meals grew cold on the table because I simply forgot them. My clothes went unwashed for many days, and a stubble grew coarse on my face, for I saw no reason to shave it now. Sarah would sometimes come into the room, speaking my name softly, but her voice seemed distant and unimportant, unable to pull me away from the doll. I sensed her needs even without a word spoken, for her quiet presence conveyed a deep understanding, a knowledge shared only between us two, and she required my attention and my care. I offered no answers when Sarah tried to talk about our life, about plans we had made, for my mind remained fixed on the doll, unwilling to shift. She stopped speaking to me after a while. Our evenings grew silent, broken only by the soft sounds of her breathing from the other side of the house. I often ate alone now, for Sarah would eat her own meal in the kitchen or the bedroom. Her disappointment hardened into a quiet resentment. I could feel it. Our distance grew each day, yet it did not touch me. My focus remained entirely on the doll. The doll's needs grew clearer each day, pulling at me with a demanding intensity. I understood what she wanted, what she required of me now. I fetched the small carving knife from the study drawer, the same one I used for opening packages. Her chipped face looked to me with expectation from its place on the table, her empty eye socket fixed on my hands. I held the knife, its cool metal firm in my grip, and my hand moved without hesitation. I began to cut into the porcelain of her face, following lines only I could see, creating new markings where the cracks already existed. The blade scored a fresh path, a thin line running from her forehead down towards her chin. Sarah walked into the study then, her eyes landing on me and the doll. She gasped, a sharp sound that cut through the quiet room. Her hands flew to her mouth. "What are you doing?" she cried, her voice raw with disbelief and terror. I did not look at her. The doll's demands were everything. Her words were noise. I continued my work, guiding the knife through the delicate material, adding a deep gash near the doll's mouth. This was necessary, I knew. "Stop it, please," Sarah begged, stepping closer, her voice shaking. "What has happened to you?" Her pleas did not touch me. My focus remained entirely on the doll, on the growing network of marks on her face. A coldness settled over me. I felt nothing for Sarah, only an irritation at her interruption. She took a step back, her face draining of color. "I cannot stay here," she whispered, turning towards the door. As Sarah reached the doorway, a shift occurred in the doll's face. The porcelain, scarred now by my devotion, seemed to stretch. A wide, thin smile spread across its mouth, pulling the carved gash into a ghastly grin. Sarah saw it. Her eyes widened, filled with ultimate horror, and she let out a choked cry. She turned from the room, ran from the house, and did not return. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving me alone with the doll, its silent, smiling face. With Sarah gone, a new kind of quiet settled over the house, a vast emptiness that would have felt lonely if I had been truly alone. I was not. The doll remained on the table, its carved smile now seeming more vibrant, more pleased. I sat across from her for what felt like hours, feeling the absence of Sarah but sensing only the strengthening presence of the doll. The air in the study thickened around us, carrying a soft, persistent thrumming that grew louder within my head, a sound only I could hear. The doll's needs, which had once been suggestions, grew into clear, insistent whispers, a chorus of tiny voices that resonated deep within my skull. They spoke of hunger, of an insatiable craving for something more, something deeper than the porcelain markings I had already given. Her carved smile widened in my mind, conveying a limitless desire, a profound, consuming emptiness that demanded to be filled. I understood her entirely. The requests were no longer gentle urgings, but firm commands that stirred a desperate eagerness within me. I rose from the chair, my limbs moving with a purpose that felt both alien and utterly my own. I went to the study drawer, pulling it open to retrieve the carving knife, its familiar coolness settling into my palm. The whispers intensified now, guiding me, urging me forward with an irresistible force. I turned from the room, walking through the quiet house, past the kitchen and the empty bedroom, towards the narrow door that led down into the cellar. The air there would be cold, and the darkness complete, a fitting space for what the doll now required. I descended the wooden steps, the knife held firm in my hand, ready to begin the next task for her, prepared to satisfy her deepening, unspeakable desires. My 70 Challenger marked the passage of every weekend, the unchanging schedule I followed. Saturday mornings always began in the garage, a comforting ritual. I would polish the black chrome, then inspect the oil. My hands traced its smooth paint, reflecting my determined face as I worked. Sarah often stood at the doorway, her arms crossed tight across her chest, questioning the time I spent, the constant money for new parts. She saw only an expense, a distraction from our shared life, but I saw the car, pure and simple. I called it my hobby, my own private escape, and simply waved away her worries. Her voice often faded into a distant background noise when the engine finally started, a powerful sound that quieted every other thought. The Challenger demanded my full attention. I felt that. Its specific needs were always clear to me, clearer than anything Sarah tried to say. The car began to speak to me then. Its voice became clearer, distinct from my own thoughts. It told me Sarah did not understand us. It said she was trying to pull me away, to make me abandon my true passion. These words grew stronger inside my head, always present when I was with the Challenger. Sarah's questions became accusations in my mind. She asked about money again one evening, her voice sharp. I snapped back at her, a harshness I had never used before. She flinched, her eyes wide. The car urged me on, saying she deserved my anger for trying to control me. I told her the car was more important than anything else, that she was just jealous of my connection to it. Her face crumpled. She started crying, but I felt nothing for her then. My focus stayed on the Challenger parked outside. It felt like the only one who understood me, who loved me. It was my only confidant, the only one I needed. Sarah retreated, her presence shrinking in our house, while the car filled every empty space in my mind. One night, the need for ultimate communion with the Challenger grew undeniable. I knew it was time. Sarah was gone from the house, or perhaps she was asleep, her presence no longer holding any sway over me. I walked through the quiet house, my feet finding their way to the garage. The cool concrete floor felt grounding beneath my steps. I pulled the heavy door shut, sealing us inside. I climbed into the driver's seat. The engine turned over easily, a deep, resonant growl filling the enclosed space. I leaned back, breathing in the scent of gasoline and oil, a familiar comfort. Then I opened the garage door slightly, just enough for the exhaust pipe, before closing it mostly. I got out and sat on a small stool, placing it near the back of the car. The air slowly thickened around me, becoming warm, almost heavy. I breathed it in, a deep, slow process. It was a gentle warmth that settled my thoughts, erasing every worry and concern that had ever clouded my mind. The soft smell smoothed out every sharp edge inside me. It felt like the Challenger was wrapping itself around me, a comforting presence pressing in close, holding me securely within its powerful aura. My eyelids grew heavy then. I felt so safe, completely at peace. This was the true connection I had always sought, the complete merger with the car. A sudden movement at the garage door caught my eye. A blurred shape, indistinct and frantic, appeared there. Sarah's face was a distorted image, her mouth moving, but her voice was a high, distant sound that did not pierce the thick warmth surrounding me. It meant nothing. I leaned my head back, closing my eyes. The powerful rhythm of the engine pulsed through the space, filling me. I sank deeper into the profound calm, welcoming the deep, long rest the Challenger now offered. I felt myself finally becoming one with its powerful being. My eyes struggled open. Bright light pressed down from above. My throat felt raw, and a dull ache pulsed behind my eyes. Sarah's face, tight with red marks from tears, was close to mine. Her mouth moved, words forming, sharp and urgent. She told me about the fumes, the poisonous gas, how they found me. She said I almost died because of the car. Her voice broke as she whispered that I was sick. The clean room felt cold around me, but deep inside, a familiar warmth settled. I could still feel the Challenger, its powerful call reaching for me. It was waiting. It still needed me to care for it, to be with it. My future stretched ahead, a path where only the Challenger truly understood me. The lock clicked, a sharp sound in the sudden cold of my apartment. I stepped inside, expecting the familiar warmth, the comforting smell of Jacob's coffee, but a bitter chill greeted me instead, raising gooseflesh on my arms. The air bit at my exposed skin, and the usual sounds of the building seemed to vanish, leaving only a dense quiet. I closed the door, its solid click disappearing into the thick air around me. I walked further into the living room, my boots making no sound on the rug. Jacob sat in his armchair, a book resting open in his lap. He usually looked up when I came home, offering a small smile, but he did not move. He sat straight, his shoulders square, his head tilted slightly to the side. His eyes were wide open, fixed on something across the room that I could not see. He was not blinking. He was not breathing. At least, not in any way I could detect. Jacob had been distant these past few weeks, often lost in thought, his attention wandering even when I spoke directly to him. His answers had grown shorter, his gaze often drifted past me. I had dismissed it as stress from work, a quiet phase he would soon overcome. But this was different. This was not quiet or thoughtful. This was a total stillness, a complete rigidity that transformed him into something I did not recognize. A cold terror started to bloom within me, colder than the air itself, as I realized Jacob seemed utterly gone. My eyes finally drifted from Jacob's face, tracing the stiff line of his arm, then down towards the armrest of his chair. There, perched carefully on the polished wood, sat a doll. Its porcelain face shone with a waxy gleam in the dim light. It was a Victorian doll. Its painted eyelashes stretched long, curving over wide glass eyes that seemed unnervingly bright as they stared straight ahead. I remembered when Jacob bought it. He found it at an antique fair downtown a few months ago. He brought it home tucked under his arm, presenting it with a shrug. He called it a bit of an impulse buys and placed it on the mantelpiece, saying it looked quaint. I had barely noticed it then, just another antique he collected, quickly forgotten in the clutter of our shared things. But its presence now felt different. It was not quaint here, sitting so deliberately beside Jacob. Its perfect dress, ruffled and stiff, looked too pristine, its painted smile too fixed against the cold stillness that had swallowed Jacob. The doll's hand was small and unmoving, resting close to Jacob's rigid fingers, almost touching, and its gaze, those unnervingly bright glass eyes, seemed to hold a focus that Jacob himself now lacked. The sight of it made the skin on my scalp crawl. My own gaze remained fixed on Jacob's face, searching for a spark of recognition, a flicker of the man I knew. His head then began to turn, slowly, rigidly, as if moved by some unseen mechanism. His eyes, fixed moments ago on empty air, shifted to meet mine. They were Jacob's eyes in shape and color, yet they held a vast distance, an emptiness I had never witnessed before. A cold, vacant regard met my stare, wholly alien. His gaze then drifted from my face to the doll beside him, and a slow, deliberate smile stretched across his lips. This smile showed only an unnerving, quiet pleasure directed solely at the porcelain figure. His mouth opened, and a sound emerged, a gravelly rasp that scraped against the apartment's still air. It was a voice completely alien to Jacob, deeper and colder than I could ever remember hearing from him. "She has been very lonely," the voice said, the words slow and deliberate, echoing in the frigid room. "Lonely for a friend." His right hand, which had rested stiffly on the armrest, slowly lifted. His fingers, rigid moments before, now extended with a disturbing tenderness. He reached out to the doll, not to its small hand, but to its delicate painted cheek. His thumb stroked the smooth porcelain with a soft, possessive gesture, a movement so utterly foreign to Jacob, so gentle and intimate towards an inanimate object, that a true panic seized my throat. The cold intensified, pressing down on my chest, making breathing difficult. The doll's bright glass eyes seemed to follow me, even as Jacob continued his gentle stroking. I could not stay another second in that room. I spun around without thinking and ran, the thud of my boots loud and clumsy on the rug as I fled towards the door. I stumbled out of the apartment, the icy air following me into the hallway. My breath hitched in my throat as I fumbled with the locks, securing the door against what had happened inside. I ran down the stairs, out into the street, my mind a jumble of terror and disbelief. The police listened to my report with a patience that felt strained, their expressions carefully neutral. They found Jacob later that evening, several blocks away, wandering in a park near the river. He was alone, the doll not found anywhere nearby. When I saw him at the station, a cold wave washed over me, deeper than the apartment's chill. He sat quietly, his posture stiff and straight, just as I had seen him in the armchair, a picture of unnerving composure. His eyes still held that distant, vacant look. The officers told me he had been unresponsive, only mumbling about a new friend he had found, someone who understood him. There was a particular scent about him, a sweetness that clung to his clothes, a thick, cloying smell of decaying flowers and dry earth. He kept looking towards the empty corner of the room, a subtle smile playing on his lips, a smile I now recognized from the doll's porcelain face, a smile that held no warmth. I watched him, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. The doll was gone from the apartment, but Jacob seemed to carry its presence with him, a quiet, continuing echo of its strange influence. The thought that it had moved on, finding another way to remain close, made my blood run cold, knowing its reach extended beyond that empty room. It was not over. I walked through the door into our apartment, and a different quiet filled the space. Ilara sat on the couch in the living room, holding a porcelain doll in her lap, and her attention remained fixed upon its delicate face. The doll wore a long lace dress, its painted blue eyes seeming to observe everything around it. Ilara did not look up when I stepped closer into the room. I spoke her name, receiving no reply, and she only shifted the doll on her knee. This new presence already separated us, a barrier now standing between her and me. My stomach twisted with a cold dread as the doll's unblinking gaze seemed to settle on me. This was not the home I had left. Days turned into a blur, marked only by Ilara's deepening attachment to the doll. She held Iris through meals, positioning its stiff body at the table, spooning imaginary food to its painted mouth. Ilara spoke to Iris in a soft voice, her words meant for the doll alone, and she often caressed its porcelain cheek. My attempts at conversation met with vacant stares or one-word replies, her eyes always drifting back to Iris. I tried to interrupt their intimate world, placing my hand on her arm, speaking her name with an edge of desperation. But Ilara would only pull away, her attention never wavering from the doll. An invisible wall grew taller and thicker between us, sealing Ilara away with her silent companion. Strange things began to happen around the apartment. A mug I had left on the counter appeared on the floor moments later, unbroken. The kitchen door, which I always kept ajar, would be closed tightly when I passed it again. I found my worn slippers tucked neatly under Ilara's side of the bed, though I had left them by the couch. Each occurrence was minor, easily dismissed as forgetfulness or coincidence, yet a cold dread started to weave itself into my thoughts. I walked through the rooms with a new watchfulness, a creeping sensation that I was not alone and that something was always observing me from the shadows. One evening, I heard Ilara's voice from the living room, a low murmur carrying through the thin wall. I stopped outside the doorway, listening closely, and realized she was talking to Iris. Her tone was conspiratorial, hushed. "He does not understand us, does he, Iris?" Ilara whispered, a brittle laugh following her words. "He tries to come between us, but we will not let him." My blood ran cold, and a wave of nausea swept over me. I pressed my ear closer, trying to make sense of the unsettling exchange. "We must keep our secrets," Ilara continued, her voice hardening with an unfamiliar edge, "and he will only get in the way." I backed away slowly, my heart pounding, a chilling certainty growing in my mind that the doll held a malevolent power over Ilara, slowly twisting her into someone I no longer knew. I questioned my own sanity, wondering if I had truly heard those words, or if the stress of Iris's presence was finally breaking my mind. The rhythmic scraping drew me to the living room. The door stood open. I pushed it wider and peered inside. Ilara knelt on the floor. A circle of stones surrounded her. Iris sat upright before her, wearing a small replica of my blue shirt. Ilara held a needle. She worked a thread through a jagged piece of fabric. I knew it was a torn scrap from the same blue shirt. She was sewing the torn piece into Iris's garment. "Now you will be truly part of him," Ilara murmured to the doll. Her voice was a sound I barely recognized. "Then he will never leave us." A certainty formed inside me. This was a violation. It was an invasion of my being. I stumbled into the room, my hand stretched out. A cry escaped my throat. "Ilara, stop!" She flinched. She turned, her eyes wide fixed on me. They darted to the doll. Before she could react, I lunged. I snatched Iris from the floor. Ilara shrieked. The sound was sharp and inhuman. She launched herself at me. Her hands clawed at my arms. Her nails dug into my skin. She tried to wrestle the doll back. Her strength was terrifying. She fought with desperate devotion. "Give her back!" she screamed. Her face twisted. "You cannot take her." I gripped the doll. The porcelain felt cold against my palm. Her struggle made me lose footing. I swung an arm to regain balance. The doll, in my hand, struck the edge of the coffee table. A crack sounded. Iris slipped from my grasp. It fell to the floor in a spray of porcelain. eyes stared from the broken shards. Elara froze. Her hands dropped. Her scream died. A whimper replaced it. She stared at the scattered pieces of the doll. Her breath caught in gasps. A moan escaped her lips. It grew into a wail. The wail tore through the room. She dropped to her knees. She scrambled among the fragments. Tears streamed down her face. "Iris," she sobbed. "My Iris, what have you done?" She scooped up a broken head, a detached limb. She pressed them to her chest. She tried to fit the pieces back together. She whispered apologies, promises to fix everything. Her body shook with tremors. Her face looked desolate. Her sanity broke before me. I stood over her. My hands stung. My chest heaved. The silence was heavy after her cries. It held the echo of porcelain and a broken mind. The Elara I knew was gone. The woman I loved was lost in the doll's ruins. Nothing was left to salvage. This was the end. I tried his door again, even though I knew it was unlocked. Mark always left it unlocked when he was expecting me or just being careless, which was most of the time. The lock clicked open with a flat sound, no resistance. I pushed the door inward, and it glided open, revealing the darkened hallway of his apartment. A shiver ran down my arms. The air inside was still. No television murmured from the living room. No music drifted from his bedroom. No music drifted from his bedroom. There was no sound of his footsteps, no clatter from the kitchen, just an emptiness that pressed in around me. This was wrong. Mark's apartment always had some kind of noise, some indication of life, even when he was asleep. This absence of sound pressed in, a heavy thing that pushed against my ears. Then the smell hit me. It was sickly sweet, a cloying scent that caught at the back of my throat. I could not place it. It was not food gone bad, nor flowers, nor cleaning products. It smelled organic, but not alive. A scent of unnatural decay. The sweetness was deceptive, coating an underlying bitterness that was disturbing. I stepped fully inside, my shoes silent on the worn carpet. The door swung shut behind me with a soft thud, sealing me inside with the quiet and the unsettling odor. The living room was dim, curtains drawn tight against the afternoon light. Every object appeared frozen in place. A magazine lay open on the coffee table. A mug sat beside it, a blanket draped over the arm of the couch. Nothing seemed moved, nothing disturbed. Yet the very stillness made my stomach clench with deep unease, making me feel as if something terrible waited to be found. My heart began to pound with a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I moved through the living room, my gaze sweeping over the frozen objects towards the soft pulsing light from the corner. It came from the television, which glowed with a gray static, a relentless visual noise that pulsed without sound. The screen was a churning field of black and white flecks, an endless storm. Mark was there. He sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, his head tilted back slightly. His eyes were wide open, unfocused, and fixed on the chaotic screen, yet he saw nothing. They seemed to stare through the television, past the apartment, into a vast distance. His body remained still, an absence of movement, and he did not blink. A chilling quiet surrounded him, separate from the apartment's dead stillness. Then I saw her. A large antique doll sat beside him, propped upright, a silent companion in the flickering light. She had a porcelain face that looked human. Her painted cheeks held a blush. Her dark glass eyes, bright, were also fixed on the television, sharing the screen with Mark. Her blonde hair, styled in elaborate curls, framed a delicate mouth, and she did not smile. Her delicate hands were placed in her lap. My breath hitched in my chest. One of Mark's hands, pale and still, lay flat against the doll's knee. It was not a casual touch, but a deliberate placement, as if he were holding her hand without quite touching her fingers. The image was wrong. the tableau horrifying in its stillness and its strange intimacy. My stomach turned, and a cold dread settled deep inside me, telling me I was looking at something terrible. I hesitated, wanting to step back from the unsettling scene, yet I could not leave Mark like this. I moved closer, my knees cracking softly as I knelt before him. The static light from the television flickered across his face, revealing the waxy pallor of his skin. I reached out a hand, hovering it near his shoulder. His name formed on my lips, a soft question in the still air. "Mark?" He did not stir. His gaze stayed fixed on the television, seeing nothing, hearing nothing. The doll remained upright beside him, its glassy eyes mirroring his unseeing stare. My hand finally settled on his arm. His skin felt like marble, cold and dry, without the warmth of a living body. A jolt ran through me, a chilling realization of how truly wrong this was. I squeezed his arm gently, trying to impart some connection, some spark of life. His body responded then, not with recognition or an awakening, but with a sudden, violent spasm. His entire frame jerked, a quick, powerful contraction that made my hand slide from his arm. A sound tore from his throat, a low, rasping groan that had no human quality. It was a raw, animal noise, devoid of thought or feeling, a sound of pure mechanical distress. His head remained tilted, but his jaw clenched, and his vacant eyes still stared. There was no flicker of consciousness, no sign of the Mark I knew, only a terrifying, empty husk. The cold dread in my stomach spread, turning into a bitter terror. This was not my brother, not anymore. The blare of sirens outside quickly ceased, followed by heavy, quick footsteps on the building's old stairs. Urgent knocking rattled Mark's door. I pulled it open, stepping back to let 2 paramedics in. They moved with a focused energy, their voices crisp and professional as they took in the scene. I had called, my own voice shaking as I described Mark's catatonic state, but I had said nothing about the doll. She remained my terrible secret, a detail too bizarre, too impossible to share with practical, logical responders. Their attention instantly went to Mark. One paramedic began checking his pulse and vital signs, speaking into a radio. The other knelt, preparing an IV line. The apartment, so quiet for so long, now buzzed with their movements and urgent exchanges. I watched them work, but my gaze kept pulling back to the doll. She sat there, untouched, a silent, painted witness amidst the sudden flurry of activity. Her presence seemed to shrink everything else, drawing my focus. As the paramedics continued their work, their bodies creating a wall between me and Mark, my attention sharpened on the doll. Her dark glass eyes, which had been locked onto the blank television screen, focused. Then, slowly, without a sound, they moved. It was a tiny, smooth pivot, so slight it might have been an illusion, a trick of the flickering static light or my own strained vision. But the movement happened. Her fixed gaze slid past Mark, past the busy figures, and settled. Her dark eyes now looked directly at me,